you're on. You're on.
Fantastic. Yay, we're here. I'm glad you see it because I don't see it. So that's awesome. Welcome, everybody. I am here today with someone who's very special to me, Angela Simpson. Thank you for joining us today and being willing to share all of the little tidbits in how you created the amazing projects that are on our release page. And I wanted to, first of all, have Angela share a little bit about herself, like three little things that most people might not know about you that I think they'd find interesting.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I think maybe the first thing, I grew up in several places. I'm originally born in Canada, in Alberta, and then moved to the Middle East when I was 13 with my family, and lived near Saudi Arabia, and then came back to Canada for university. That was in Ontario. I moved as far west as I could, which is to Vancouver, which is about as warm as it gets in Canada. And then that still wasn't quite enough. So I ended up moving down here to where I am currently, which is LA. Love it. I guess the second thing about me is that before my crafting life, I was also a food blogger. So I blogged about fitness and food for about 10 years, which is why the name of my Instagram account does not match the name of my blog, but it is. You'll find lots of recipes on my blog if you dig back far enough. And a third thing. I think my first Essentials by Ellen stamp set was I have it here, the Organic Elements stamp set, which is designed by Julie. This one was released just before last summer. And it wasn't the only Essentials by Ellen thing I bought. I bought like almost the entire release because it was all just so good. And then a whole bunch of stuff that was released before. But this one was the one that hooked me and pulled me in. So I've been a sucker for it all ever since.
Well, yeah, again, it's one of those things that when you first started using the release that you purchased, I immediately saw what you were creating, and I gravitate towards your simple, elegant style that you use when you stamp, and reached out to you, and we have a lot in common, being Canadian, and a lot of things, health things, and all the things.
Yeah.
We're so excited to have people here. I'm trying to figure out where we're at actually, so that I can follow along and and watch for comments, but I haven't figured that out yet. I've kind of been looking off in the side over here to see if I can figure out where we're at, but I know that I have Heather's help here today as well. She's in behind the scenes, so hopefully she's going to be able to find those comments and help me, prompt me with what the comments are coming in, just because I have not been able to figure it out yet. So
that's all right.
You're showing some of your things. I'll keep searching for it so that I can actually find it. But we want people to leave comments and ask questions in our live so that we can help answer those. And we're going to give away a $25 gift certificate to our store. So be sure to leave a comment or a question for Angela today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about how the color palette was chosen and what the thought processes are that you go into when you're selecting a color palette. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Angela.
For sure. So I cannot take credit for the color palette that was chosen for this release. That was the creative genius of Heather, who is one of your product developers. Absolutely brilliant. I loved when she sent me the mood board. I was so into it. And what she said, that when she chose it, she sort of starts to think about the palette as she's designing the release. And then as she solidifies like the concepts that are in the release and like all of the elements, she starts to then see the color. And then after that, it's just a matter of creating like a vision for like sort of the mood board that we as brand ambassadors get to see, and then translating that into ink colors. So that's her process. For me, I kind of think about sometimes it's just like colors that I'm drawn to, and I'll build a palette from there. But I'm often also thinking about the techniques that I want to do. So, for example, with like ink blending, if there were colors, if I had a palette of like pinks and greens, I know that those aren't going to blend too well together. So rather than like maybe that's not a technique that I'm going to focus on, or maybe I'll still do ink blending with like the pinks, but I'll find another way to incorporate the greens through like a green sentiment strip or something like that. So I'm definitely thinking about the techniques I'm going to be doing while I'm picking my colors. Sometimes though, I'll just see like packaging or some sort of like piece of art that I think is amazing and I love the colors in, and then I'll just go and pick them out and try and match them as close as possible and then figure out the technique after. I don't know what I'm going to make, but it's going to look like it's going to have these colors in it.
Right, right. So once you get that color palette selected, is there anything else that you do that really helps bring along, like, what are some of the different shortcuts that you use to bring that all about?
Yeah, so I have lots of crafting shortcuts, I think, and my future self is always really grateful when I do them because I'm like, oh, I don't have to get my embossing gun out or anything like that. One of them is pre-cutting like my or like batch creating my sentiments.
Mhm.
So for this release, I just made myself, I'll show you. I'm gonna knock them out of order, but like I have a whole container here of all of the sentiments that I made. And I do the same thing with like making my own like hot foil cardstock. So those are things that I can do when like I might not necessarily be feeling super creative, or I might not have enough time to make a full card, but I can make like a component. Another one is like pre-cutting my card bases and card panels. Again, if I'm not feeling creative, it's just sort of like a meditative task that I'll put on Netflix and do that, because you can't make cards without card bases.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, do you always use white or do you like to change it up? Like, how do you go about doing that?
I like white. I use a lot of white. I really like a nice, clean and simple design. I tend to incorporate like more pops of color into my cards, with white being the backdrop. And yeah, I really do need to challenge myself to do something a little bit different, but that's what I usually gravitate towards.
What
Um,
about ink colors? Do you pick up different ink colors then that are in the color palette? Or like, how do you bring those colors in other than ink blending?
Yeah, for sure. So not only the inks, but like I'll try and match whatever, like take my cardstock swatches out and match as closely as I can to those. And then in the case of this release, also embroidery floss, because we have a lot of fun like stitching related dies and pieces in this one. So yeah, and embroidery floss comes in, I feel, more colors than inks do, and it's super affordable. So I have a large collection.
Yeah, it's a great way to just add little touches of color here and there too. So
Totally.
again, it's like, again, once you get that theme together and you have all the different components and you have all these little pieces, then what's next?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to actually add that another thing that I do is the pre-stamping and pre-cutting of images. So, for example, with the new one in a bazillion, like I did a lot of coloring with those
Mhm.
for what I created. But while I was doing that, I just stamped a whole bunch of extras. And I just store them in the back of like the plastic pocket, so that next time I go and make a card, I don't have to do that bit and I can just like go straight to coloring, or I can grab these. And if I'm like just wanting to color for like 10 minutes, I have something to color that I can use later.
Right. Yeah, again, it's just one of those things that trying to create these little shortcuts so that you can then work with all these components, I think helps a lot
Mhm.
to kind of speed along the process of making a set of cards.
Yeah.
And so, are there any types of thoughts that go into how it is that you then put those together?
I think so when I'm thinking through my techniques, I'm thinking about how I'm going to use the color. Like, do I have like quite bold colors that I'm working with? Do I want to incorporate them in small amounts, or are they going to really are they going to be used for a background, for example, and be a lot more prominent? For example, like the card that I posted for our Instagram hop today, you can see that the colors are very like prominent in the background. They don't like you still know where you're gonna look, like your eye does still go to the sentiment, but you have like these lovely pops of color in the background. And then if you compare that to like a different card where the color is more, I guess, concentrated, there's a lot of white space. And I think that that really helps your eye know where to look on the card. Another example is this one here, where there's like even more white space. And I typically design in like thirds. So for example, this is all the action here is sort of like on the bottom third of the card. And your eye is naturally drawn from left to right, which is like the way we read things. And so that's something that I'm thinking about is like thirds, and then also use of my white space while I'm figuring out where those components are going to go.
Very, very fun. I know that you have some special things on your desk. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to make a little switch to your desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you, and I'm going to let you unmute your phone so that it goes right down there to your desktop. Let's see if that's going to work. Angela and I have actually practiced this, and I know that it's just one of those things when you start, doing it for real, it's like, oh, you gotta get underneath your phone to be able to do it. But it looks good, Angela.
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay, great. So I was going to go through a couple of the samples that I made, and one of those things that I just talked about was white space. And in, like I was showing you in this card, I have quite a lot of just like plain, really white space. But this one, when I was designing it, I thought if I leave it like all white in the background, that's a little bit too plain for what I was after. So one of the things that I did was I used the dies from the Red Friends die set, and I just stacked them to make more of like a textured background. And what that does is it adds like subtle visual interest, but your eye still goes to where the color is. So that's an example of sort of just a way to think about using your white space.
And the color really does draw you into that focal point.
Yeah, for sure. And then what's another thing I wanted to highlight? So I talked about designing in thirds, or like doing your composition and like looking at your card panel as divided into thirds. But another thing that I do is when I'm deciding what I'm going to put on a card, I'm kind of picking items in clusters of 3 or in odd numbers, because oddly we like odd numbers in design. And so you can see with this one, there's like 3 of these guys here on the hoops of the oval hoops card. I've got 3 hoops, and then on another one, so for example this guy, I've kind of got little clusters. So I have like my background elements, my little illustration, and my sentiment. So it's a nice little trio. Just thought that might be useful. And then also when it comes to shaker bits, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about embellishments in a second, but I decided to go with some clear iridescent stars in the background here, just because that honeycomb print does have quite a bit going on with it. And I really didn't want to make anything that was in the background too distracting. So I went with something that was more subtle. And on camera, you might not be able to see it too much because of the light, but in person, I feel like it's like just enough.
Someone was asking if they had missed what the color strips were on the side of that one honeybee card.
Oh, on this one?
Yes.
Yes, let me see if I can remember. So this is Concord and Ninth Buttercup, Concord and Ninth Grapefruit and Sorbet. And then the light orange is Hero Arts, Papaya, I think. They're lighter orange. Then the darker orange, I believe, is also Hero Arts, but one of their darker orange colors. Red is Hero Arts. Actually, sorry, that's Concord and Ninth Cranberry, I believe.
Actually, I take that back. No, it's Hero Arts. So a mix of Concord and Ninth and Hero Arts cardstock was what I was able to, what I found was the closest match to what
I have to say that our team does love the combination of that Concord and Ninth and Hero Arts. I think those are the ones that we lean to the most, other than white. White is our go-to, I think, for most of our team. And a lot of times, I wasn't quite sure if you had taken your Copic markers and colored it. So I had to ask you about that. So did you create strips and just glue it all together? Or how did you create that?
So yeah, I used the what are they called? And the Essentials by Ellen.
The long strips?
The Color Me strips, yes.
Color strips, yeah.
But I just used those, and then I didn't color them after. I did just cut them straight from cardstock. But if I didn't have the cardstock, what I could have done was just taken the Catherine Pooler inks that we use like for the actual marketing, like for our palette, and then just swipe those ink pads across to create the right color.
Right. Yeah. Again, like there's so many ways to create it. And so to know what you've done, I think people love to know the little details about it. So I'll let you go back to explaining it, but I thought I better ask that before I forget that there was a question asked.
Yeah, for sure. Which other ones did I want to go through? Oh, this guy. So this one is something I like. Spotlight stamping is not something that I do a ton of, and I don't it's not something that comes to mind like for me like immediately, but I do have a list of techniques that I just kind of keep in my like here in my craft room, so that if I'm not feeling super inspired, then I can look at those and be like, oh, I haven't done this in a while or that in a while. And when I was designing with this, I'm not gonna lie, the oval hoops were a bit of a struggle for me to come up with a lot of ideas for. But in the end, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things you can do with these. Like you can make like tags like this guy, or you can do like frames or shakers. There's so many possibilities. But when I saw spotlight stamping on my list, I was like, oh, I could do like spotlight ink blending. And so the way I made this one was just, I created a full ink blended panel with the colors in the palette. And then when I was stamping the flowers, I did them first on that panel, like in my MISTI. And then without moving the stamp in my MISTI, I just put a white panel in and did the exact same thing again. So I had two identical pieces, one colored and one black and white, and then used the dies in the oval hoops to cut out the hoop shape.
That is so clever. Like, again, I also love that you keep a list of techniques in your workspace just to like pop up to give you, like, that's a phenomenal tip right there, Angela. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's definitely helpful. If I didn't have that list, every single card I create would just be stripes. I promise.
I get that. I might have polka dots, or no, I probably have stitching.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that little tag that you snuck in there to show us, that was so quick. I don't know if you have it again. It's like, oh my gosh, it's adorable.
Yeah, this guy's just a little shaker tag. So I didn't attach it to the box because I wanted to be able to hold it up. So inside, I just did a little bit of stamping. This is with the Sauna ink from Catherine Pooler. And then again, those iridescent stars are inside. And the new the wood look
wood veneer.
Yeah, wood veneer cardstock. And I love that because it's self-adhesive, so you don't actually have to do too much work to get it to stick to your projects. And inside, I just, because those dies are quite thin, I cut the same thing from several sheets of just white scrap cardstock and then stuck them on top of each other. And that gave, I mean, these are flat stars, so they have plenty of room to move, but it gave them even more. And just gave the
love it
a bit more weight.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that. That is just like, oh, that just makes me so happy when I look at that.
Oh, thank you. And then for the box, actually, this was so as you can, I hope you can see in the camera, this is textured with the A2 piercing plate. And because that plate doesn't have an edge on it, you can repeat the pattern for as big of a piece of cardstock as you have. So I just cut out using the it's called the 2-in-1 box. The 2-in-1 box. The two panels, which you can cut from A2, and then stuck them together, and then use that same wood veneer I was able to get it to bend without breaking, which is wonderful. I was so excited about that.
That's
To
gorgeous.
make like a wraparound. Thanks.
Oh, I love it. Just love it.
Yeah.
And again, for those who are maybe just joining us right now, we're just showing all types of projects that you can make with a single color palette by pre-making all these little pieces and then start working them together. Like, look how incredible this whole set looks together on your screen right now. I'm just like, I'm totally jazzed by it. It would make an amazing gift to somebody, or, you know, just sending those out to people.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. I also wanted to highlight the other thing that I got very into when I was making these was like doing a coordinating card and box. I was like, well, if I'm going to give a card and a gift, they should match, right? So I did that with these ones.
oh,
So with this, I used the new Essentials by Ellen press plate, which is a solid foil plate. And I just made myself, you can actually see, I did a whole bunch of like my own DIY cardstock. Oh, you can see my phone in the
love
section.
it. Oh, gorgeous.
And then using the honeycomb, which is I think one of my favorite things in the release, because you can use it so many ways. There's like the hexagons that it cuts, then there's the negative with a frame, or like the outline with a frame and without. And so I created my gold cardstock and then had so many of these little hexagons that I wanted to stick on. So one card with all of this repetition was still not enough to use them all. So I thought, I'm going to make a box. And yeah, so that's how this little box came to be.
Okay, so do you have a hint for us as to how to get those lined up so perfectly?
Oh, yes. So what I did was, I have my leftovers back here.
Mm-hmm.
I just, when I was making the card, because you can situate this anyway, and it's like a background builder. So if I wanted to do more, I could just go and stick the die into these areas here, and that would tell me exactly where to put them. But yeah, I just kind of like turned this all the way until I had my full panel in there. And then on here, I did the exact same thing. I just didn't fill them all in.
Fantastic. Yeah, it looks so good. So good. And again, I think one of the big things that I admire so much about your work is your precision. Your precision just makes it so gorgeous.
Oh, thank you so much. I have to say, my ruler and I are best friends. Alignment is really something that I need to have in my life. I have these, this is my magnetic glass mat that I'm on right here. And it has these really strong magnets that I use all the time to hold things in place while I mount my card bases and put my sentiments on and all that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, that's perfect then, to be able to help. You know, I have my magnetic ruler on my mat too, because I'm a ruler person as well. I eyeball things, but then I'm like, oh, I have to double check it. There's a type A in me.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's definitely the type A in me too. What I have trouble with is more abstract things. And that's where other crafters just blow my mind. Because I'm like, I would be so not okay with that being outside the line on my piece, but like it looks beautiful on that on your.
Oh yeah, it is. It's like each one of us has something that we're really, really good at. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So is there something that just comes naturally to you as you design that others might find helpful?
I think the just the way that I decide to use white space is something that comes kind of naturally to me. I do want to think about like what do I want the person to actually look at when they pick up this piece. So for example, with this one, like, okay, I know that my focal point is going to be up here. And so I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything too distracting down here. That's one thing. Then I think that that can come with practice. So for example, if you aren't too sure about how you want to use your white space, one thing you can do is take like a piece of press and seal and just sort of use it to secure temporarily your little cluster together. And then just play around with like moving it on the card and decide, okay, here, like you don't have to commit to it right away until you're ready. I use press and seal all the time.
Right.
And then you can also do it. Carissa did a great video with a sticky mat to show that you can do the exact same thing.
Right.
as press and seal.
And that,
Yeah.
I have to admit, I actually use my Misty, and I have a grid in my Misty that I've actually put a card front on with some different lines on it. And I should share that with people because
Oh
it
yeah.
really helps to align where those thirds are at. And I know Julie had just done a composition and layout post for us. I don't know if you
Mhm.
had a chance to see that one, but if people are wondering about how to do that, I know that there's some really specific instructions on our YouTube channel in regards to that too, because again, it's like my passion is just sharing education, and what you're doing here today, I'm just so tickled with it because again, it's just sharing these tips with people that come naturally to some of us, but not others. And so to be able to share some of those things, I think is really awesome. Is there anything that's kind of like outside the box that you use, that you think about as you're working?
Let me, I don't know, probably doesn't feel outside the box. It's something that I do naturally. Let me think here. I guess just like I try and think about how I can use my supplies in different ways. So
Mhm.
for example, with like cover dyes, those are typically more expensive than other dyes. And so like we were talking about with this box, like can I use the cover dye to like make a textured like piece of packaging, or could
Mhm.
I even like I love to foil with my cover dyes. So you
Right.
basically do it the exact same way that you would regular foiling, but you're getting like a thinner line essentially.
Right.
I don't
Right.
have an example on me right now, but you like then you can go and take the new press plate and reverse foil that so you have a very shiny piece, and you're not wasting any foil.
Well, I have to admit that press plate has been in the works for a very long time, but we haven't been able to have enough oil sales to make it a viable product until just now. And so Heather and I are just so tickled pink that we have that along with these really key sentiments. Um, and I know you showed those sentiment strips earlier, but again, I'm not sure if you mentioned that you had done those in both the reverse and like this, you guys, this little container right here in itself just makes me so happy.
Yeah. Oh, and this is actually the second, like I have another container because last night I was making more in other colors. I'm like, okay, and people are gonna be like, I love this color palette, but you've done a lot of it. So I was making other colors last night, but yeah, you can see here, these are the reverse foiled ones I just did on white, and that's what I made after I made these guys here. So this is sorbet cardstock from Concord and Ninth. And
Oh,
what I really like about when I'm foiling on like a color like this that isn't super light, I like to use the matte, the Spellbinders matte gold, just because I feel like it pops a little bit better. If I
mhm.
was doing something, these guys are embossed, but if I was doing something on lighter cardstock, I would typically use like a slightly darker gold embossing powder just to make sure that there's enough contrast there to be able to see it.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Or
just gorgeous. And now it's like whenever you create a card, yes, it might be a certain color palette, but that color palette's going to work with some other things too. I'm pretty certain of that.
oh
You can just reach for sentiment because that's the whole idea behind these sentiment strips that we have here, so that you can actually just create a card and know that you're going to put a sentiment strip on it. And if you're not quite certain who you're going to give it to or what it is, you can hold off on putting that final little piece onto it and just reach for something in your stash. And
yeah,
it's great when you have that all ready to go.
totally. Another thing I was going to mention is like for stretching your supplies, this stamp set, as well as like some of the other ones, like the Nice of You and the what are some of the other ones that has that same size? Nice of You and I can't think of the other name, but anyways, mixing and matching them, because you can basically, like, for example, here, there's a happy birthday, and then there's a, where did have the best day ever. So if you're making these sentiment strips, you could go and take like the birthday and just use that piece and you could say like, have the best birthday ever. Like you can mix and
Right.
match to create whatever you need. And then these guys at the bottom, I think are really cool because the sentiment strip thing, if you want to cut them out, we'll cut them out just like these, but you could use those to stamp borders on your cards too.
Yeah, I love the versatility and the different, like you can, there's just so much that you can do with piecing these different components together with even some of the older sets that we've had.
Mhm.
So when you are doing your finishing touches on your cards, is there something that you always reach for? How do you pick what
Yes.
you're going to put as far as a finishing touch on your cards?
Yeah. So for like this example, like I've talked about those iridescent stars a lot, but with cards like this that already have those in them, I don't tend to do anything else because those are already sort of, those are the shiny piece, or like the bit that is sort of like a different, but yeah, I guess you say the shiny piece or like the different material. Similarly for here, I just decided that a gold needle would be like the right thing to make this have like just that finishing touch. But when like in this case, I've done mostly gold embellishments, like the little thingies here. But if the color palette isn't neat, like if I don't really want to use gold or I don't really want to use silver, the Pretty Pink Posh, the sparkling clear sequins that come in 4 different sizes, those ones are wonderful because often I find that like the biggest sequin is a little bit too big for what I want, and I'm typically arranging them again in 3s. So I will take like the smaller of the 3. I use those all the time, and then also the Pink Fresh Studio metallic gold pearls, the shiny ones. Those I find match really well if you have little, like not this much gold foil on your card, but just like little bits of gold foil on your card.
Right.
Yeah.
So in your shakers, how are you finishing the backdrops in those?
In this one,
Yeah, like what is that you're showing in the back there?
So I have to admit, like my ink blending on a single panel is not always the smoothest, but that totally doesn't matter here because you would never know. Both of these were just ink, like plain A2 ink blended panels that I trimmed down to go underneath. And then when they had a little bit of color variety. So this one's like a little bit more pink down in this region, and then it had some more up here. I just kind of trimmed the card base so that the area that I wanted to see the window was over the part of the color that I wanted to see, and sealed up, used it to seal the back. So
yeah, because those are beautiful. It just really, again, it draws that palette together and really, makes it pop on the white.
Yeah, and I think the iridescence is cool because it's like it adds shine, but it doesn't take away from the color. Like it kind of takes on the color actually of the background itself. So yeah. Same with clear.
Very, very fun. So now that we know your go-to embellishments, so we know all the pretty things that you are attracted to. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch us back to the computer unless there was something else you wanted to still show us that you had.
No, I think I think that's all. I think we're good. Okay.
So I'm going to mute your phone for you and I'm going to let you unmute your computer. I got you muted now, so you're good. Because we get feedback if we don't do this. We learned that when we were practicing.
I think we nailed it. Am I back?
Yeah, you are back.
Great.
That is awesome. Nice. I'm going to just quickly look through here and see. I can tell that Heather has been on here actually, helping us answer some of the questions and tagging some of the things that you have been using. I'm just going to quickly look because we're in multiple places here. So you can see that I'm a little bit. Does anybody have a question for Angela that I have missed? Just repeat it again if I haven't been able to catch it.
I see that Tiffany's in there saying that the larger size of this press plate is really helpful just because it covers way more than an A2 card. So if you do want to make a full panel, you can do that. I like that too.
That was the whole point of it too. It's because there's some of us who just have to have the entire thing foily and shiny, right? And we really wanted to make it big enough so that we could cut out sentiments too. Like we have that beautiful scripty happy birthday, and that's a very large happy birthday. And so we wanted to be sure that we were covering our bases on all the different products that we've already designed, because I don't know if people notice this, but we always try to continue to bring back a theme so that it kind of extends the life of our products. Because again, the reality is that as somebody who is involved in this, I really, really want people to be able to create with the products and the supplies that they have purchased from us. And so it's like, I know I just mentioned briefly at the very beginning about, things we have in common. And I truly, something that's so dear to me is the fact that I truly believe that creativity brings so much positivity to someone's life. It can help create joy. It can help them deal with, issues that otherwise you get kind of stuck in. And so as we develop products, we want to make sure that we're giving people the best that we can give them. So there's just been so many fun things in this particular release that I know we could probably talk for hours, but I'm not sure that everybody would want to sit here and listen to us for hours. So I think what we'll do is I'd love to have you sum up our conversation today with your top 3 picks for creating a set of cards using a single color palette from the ideas that you shared today. What would be your top 3?
Sure. So I think number one would just be to look at your products first and think about them for a while. Like I am always so excited when I get a package in the mail. I just want to tear it open and start creating. But when I received all of this stuff, I really did think about it for like several days before I actually made anything. Just like, what am I going to do with these and how could I use them beyond what my mind immediately goes to? And that'll allow you to think, like if you are making a larger set, it'll allow you to see more possibilities and come up with more unique ideas. And then kind of similarly to that is what I mentioned before, is having a list of techniques in your craft room. It could be on the wall, it could just be on your computer or whatever. Just as many as you can think of, so that when you're not feeling super creative, or if you just want to mix things up and challenge yourself to something new, you can be like, oh, I haven't done, embossed resist in a long time. How could I use this product that way? Or is there like a slight modification of that technique that I could do that would look cool? So I think that is super handy to have. I don't know. I've had it sort of in my phone for a long time, and it just keeps getting longer and longer. Fun note to visit. And then I think last would just be, don't overwhelm yourself with thinking about making cards right away. Like the composition, I think, is something that a lot of people do get hung up on, which is why Julie's video on YouTube is so helpful. But if you think about just designing like elements, like little clusters, and maybe not even clusters first, be like, okay, first I'm going to make a bunch of sentiments, then I'm going to color a bunch of bees, like all of that kind of stuff. Then think about making your clusters. So like we talked about, designing in 3s or odd numbers, or figuring out what you're going to put together. And then you can get onto your composition. It'll just, again, allow you to see more ways to use a product, to combine products. And it'll make the actual composition a lot easier when you can like hold things in place. Because visually we like to see, oh, like how big is this in comparison to this, and will these work well together? And I think having those pieces ready to mix and match is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again, because I know that there's so many people who admire what it is that you do. And so to be able to share you with them today has just been such an honor and a privilege to have you here. Where is it that people can find you if they're looking for you? I'm sure that, like if you can tell them what your blog name is and what your Instagram handle is, that would be so helpful.
Yes. So my Instagram handle is @mycraftyperspective. And so if you go to my Instagram now, you will find the link to my blog and a bunch of other goodies in the link in my profile. And then my blog is My Fresh Perspective. But My Crafty Perspective on Instagram will get you to all of the other places.
That's fantastic. And I just wanted to say thank you to all those who have joined us live, and I'm hoping that people left comments, because I have somebody out there helping me pick a random name out of this just by picking a number, and we're going to go through the comments and pick somebody, and you guys get to have a gift code to our store that you can spend on any one of these fun things that was shared today. So thank you again, Angelo, so much. And thank you to all our watchers. We really appreciate you being here. So thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye. So the question is, did it stop? I'm looking for it. Still says it's live. We are still visible and live. I'm just going to go ahead and hit end for all. I don't know how to end it, guys. We're just going to wave at you.